As you roll down on the top of your boat, on its way, you set out to go. Just know you're not alone. I'm gonna make this place your home. Someday we'll all be there. Don't pay no mind to the demons that fill you with fear. The trouble that might drag you down, and if you're lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. I'm gonna make this place your home. Oh, 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 Somebody love me here. Don't pay no mind to the demons that fill you with fear. The trouble that might drag you down, and if you're lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. Gonna make this place your home. Ah, ah, ah,
You're gonna listen to dog in just a few minutes. There's one guy on the tree. It's food, yeah. And then as soon as I get off the thank you again. Thank you again. Amazing. Oh, how she rocks.
that's really beautiful. It's been a long that makes she's here. I'm a god. Sorry. I think it's pretty real. No, you know what? I almost screwed that minute. I thought, I'm so happy. Oh, stop. Oh my gosh, you guys see my friend. Wendy Mcvicker is and you're amazing, they said. They're like, Oh, yeah. So I have to Yeah, she's like a candy chair. Well, yes,
I think incorporating all that energy. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Please feel free to keep eating and drinking. Yeah, it's a party. We're here to celebrate. My name is Devin Sudman. I'm the education director here at Stewart's Opera House. I have black curly hair, light brown skin, and dark brown eyes with black rimmed glasses. And tonight I'm wearing my black Stewart's Opera House t-shirt. I first want to welcome you all tonight to Stewart's Opera House for a celebration of contemporary Appalachian writing. Is this anybody's first time here at Stewart's? Anybody? That's amazing! Can we all join in and welcome you? Welcome to Stewart's. Thanks for being here. You're like in the family now, so welcome. Stewart's Opera House is committed to our mission to be a regional leader in the arts community, a center for public expression, and an economic development partner for Southeast Ohio. We acknowledge that our historic theater sits on the traditional homelands of the Shawnee, Adena, and Hopewell peoples. We recognize the ever-systemic inequities that stem directly from this painful history of colonization and commit ourselves to respecting and reconciling this long history of injustice. Stewart's is committed to being more intentional in the role we play for racial justice. We also commit to being more inclusive of people historically and currently marginalized based on identity such as gender, sexuality, class, and heritage. We wish to publicly express that hate and systemic oppression have no home in our organization. Yes. I want to thank Melissa Wales, the Stewart's Opera House Executive Director, T-Bone and our technical team, and the Stewart's Opera House interns for your assistance in bringing this event to life. I also want to thank the Ohio Arts Council and our funders and donors for supporting Stewart's Opera House and our arts education program that I so proudly get to lead here at Stewart's. So thank you. I especially want to thank Wendy Mcvicker. Yes, Wendy Mcvicker. Poet in residence here at Stewart's Opera House, for approaching me with this idea and for assisting me in organizing this event. It is because of people like Wendy and our artists that we'll be sharing tonight that we get to create spaces to share amazing, authentic art together. Thank you. Thank you for being here throughout the night. Please feel free to get up and enjoy the amazing food catered by Chef Katie and the Cash Bar. Whatever is not eaten tonight is going home at Dunkin', so, eat it up. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Wendy Mcvicker to the podium.
Oh, it's so wonderful. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay. So thank you. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Sherry, and your family of musicians. So a line from the last song jumped out at me. No, you're not alone. That's so important. And here we are. Here we are at this together. It's very moving to me. So I'm looking at this as a party. And so I don't have, yes. So I don't want to, I didn't want to be too formal. I just wanted to make sure that I thanked all the people that Devin thanked, as well as Devin and Sherry for being here from, now I'm trying to figure out, you're from here from Northern, okay, Cincinnati or Northern Kentucky? Okay, all right. So she's come a fur piece to be with us tonight. And it is thanks to Sherry Cook Stanforth that we are having this event because the readers are all featured in issue 24 of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. And issue 24 is called Appalachian Witness. So this promises to be a rich evening of works. Many poems, at least one story, and we've already had wonderful song. So I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to let Sherry talk to us about Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, and then we will read. But I would like to echo Devin with, you should feel free, since it is a party, please. You should feel free to get up and get things to drink, get things to eat. Afterwards, I hope that we can mill around a bit and enjoy each other's company, and there will be books on the table over here that you can take home with you so that you have a souvenir memory of this wonderful evening. So thank you all, and Sherry, please.
I am so honored to be here tonight. Very excited about what's in store for all of us. So, just a little background on Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel and the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative. In 1974, a group of artists and activists got together at the Highlander Center in Newmarket, Tennessee. And that is the place that held and sheltered Rosa Parks during terrible times in our country. And it is a place that echoes the great deference to justice and community care that Devin just spoke of too. But they all gathered round together and they started talking about how important it was to establish a regional identity for Appalachian. I grew up saying Appalachian artists and writers and people who wanted to do good community-minded work. And the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative was born out of that. Many writers move in and out of this organization over decades, and there is no paperwork. You do not sign a form. You do not pay dues. You just gather. We have a seed time in the Cumberlands gathering in the spring at a place I'll mention in a moment. And we also gather at Newmarket, Tennessee, Highlander, although sadly it was recently burned in a hate crime. They're repairing it and it's been under repair now. So we did sneak on down to Hazard and stay at the wonderful school, in that little area. I said Hazard, but I'm completely doing a pandemic blank out here. Thank you, Heichman. But the journal came along in the mid 80s, and it was started by two brothers, Jim Webb and Rob Webb. And these two brothers, I didn't get to meet Rob, but I was very close to Jim. And they were just profound. They had a little company called Apple Productions. And if you think about that, you have Apple Shop, but you also have Rob, who actually went and lived in the Big Apple. And I always like to share what I learned when I first joined this lovely group so many years ago. Rob is the voice of 60 Minutes when you hear the clock ticking. So both of these men use their voices powerfully. Jim was a fabulous radio announcer who spoke for justice, especially for Black Mountain, which he watched crumbling before his very eyes, to the tune sometimes of even having his trailer burnt down. But he stood up for people and he stood up for his community. And as time went on, we produced over 30 years. I didn't bring it to hold up, but it's on the back table, an anthology of over 30 years of great writing contributions. Dick Haig put that together with some help from us behind the scenes. And I think 24 plus volumes of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. And here we are getting ready to round the bend into the unmasked edition. We have so many submissions. I will be a reading fool with my co-editors over the next 9 or 10 days, but it looks to be a great addition too. This one though, what about this cover? That's Greg Clary. What a cover. And then I shouldn't tell this, but then he wrote to me and said, "Oh, Sherry, I forgot that was already published somewhere else." And I was like, yeah, we don't mind, but I was like, oh, darn, because it's the cover. I just couldn't let go of this cow. It's too weird. It's missing some things too. I don't know if people have noticed. At the end, when everything is settled and we're mingling, if people have questions about this journal, I wanted to say this. I'm not a joiner. I'm a friendly person. Most of you who know me know I'm friendly. It takes a lot for me to join anything. And it has a lot to do for me of being able to be authentic in my connections and relationships with people and not be inside of a design and soullessly performing whatever the design puts forward. But this has been the best thing of my life. Being in the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative, and I think I'm now the longest running editor of Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. Pauletta might have rounded the bend right around 10 years, and I think this might be my 11th year coming up. So I took over big red shoes, if you know Pauletta. She was the managing editor for many years. So I'm still feeling my way through. Feel free, if you are writers out there, feel free to stalk me, any way you need to get a hold of me. But I'm hoping to continue with all of my friends and collaborators here and around us in the region. Something that is true and good about literature. Something that is not about literary prancing, or only some voices are heard. But it is a lot about support. It's about bringing dynamic and good energy to people everywhere around the amazing stories we hold in our region. So that's a little bit about Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel. And I think, Wendy, am I the first reader? I am the first reader, so I don't mind. Oh, I'm all about flow. I'm already up here and I'm very clumsy. You can ask my husband and children. So I haven't fallen yet coming up onto the stage, so we'll keep it that way. All right. Well, I just have a sprinkling of poems. I know we're getting a nice variety in here, so I will share the one in this volume. Here, it is a poem that I wrote in honor of my father. My dad was one of my best friends. I still feel him with me. But he did die fairly recently. He used to come to all the ASAs, the Appalachian Studies Association conferences with me. And I grew up, I was a living room floor kid, playing music on the living room floor. And my kids are the same. We always say we're going to get lessons one of these days, so we could really do something maybe. But as it turns out, I think I was meant just for kitchen tables and living room floors and porches and campfires. So this is for my dad. I'm also blind as a bat, so I have to do a pose while I read this one. While my newly widowed mom watches icicles melt from the kitchen window, she prays for March to bring its lion's roar. Just no more white death pouring down on our heads. Then scoots her chair into a warm patch of light, saying, "We've all had plenty of winter's hard slice." With tree limbs snapped clean off, littered up the backyard, even birds seem erased from the sky. For weeks, we've studied water's many transformations, rain turning to sleet, or snow deep enough to bury all traces of backyard garden beds. And today, the house caves sprout rows of hooked fingers, house eaves sprout rows of hooked fingers, gilded but split tongues, gnarled stalactites glittering in deadly afternoon prisms. Each drip, drip, drip runs an up-tempo course we know cannot last. Any minute they're going to fall, Mom says, though this keen vigil feels so very slow, this waiting for time to break into its clear-cut end. I'll try to cheer things up as I roll forward here. I thought I would give a shout out to Carrie Gunter Seymour today. And I suspect that other folks will maybe read from this volume too. But Carrie, these works are amazing that people are doing. Carrie's, I thought I heard a cardinal saying, has just gone all over hundreds and hundreds of libraries, and it's in the hands of so many readers. I feel so honored, especially because I was literally the 13th hour in my submission, and she still considered me. So I'm a beekeeper. I fail every other year. David keeps asking me, when are we going to get honey? And I keep saying, I don't want to take the honey. The bees might need it. And they abscond. And some of you out there are probably beekeepers. I have hive collapse. I think one year it was mites. I'm always learning my lessons when it comes to beekeeping. This is called Lost. Lost. After the nasty Bradford shed white petals, and the corn grows in lines of clothionidin, thiamethoxin, glory, all rounded up and ready, I walk down to the hive to break the wax seal the workers built to lock out the world. I find that nothing lives inside, that I've only come to grieve a lost tribe of bees, to imagine their buzzing miraculous potential. How they once knocked dust from blooms, feeding a hungry world from crib to coffin. And of course, I can't holler them back to lavender beds or goldenrod fields, where they know the south-cut paths to home and the time to beard or ball up against winter's mean slice, dreaming of seed and purposeful dancing and the heavy peace of locust plumes. Red clover still purls along the roads, waiting to hold my wandering long-gone bees. Lid lifted and crowbar flung to weeds, I kneel down to receive my lesson. Thank you. Well, and maybe this is a book I have through Bottom Dog Press called Drum String. I think I'll get my grandma's voice in here. I don't ever read this piece, but I'm inclined to read it tonight. I think I wrote the page number down on it here. It's called Sleeping with Grandma. So my grandma, well, the kids will attest to this too. She told real stories. She told stories of murders that happened when she was young. She told stories of getting angry. I guess they must have worked for another farm in order to be able to live on the land, throwing yams across the field when she wasn't allowed to go play. She was always scolding me and saying, "Don't you go telling me about that, honey girl. I got something to," she didn't want to garden when she came north either. But here it is, Sleeping with Grandma. Definitely also one of my best friends. The terrible thing didn't happen to her, but to a boy she knew. She'd remember the dark, wet night in the Georgia woods and say, "You hear that old wind? Takes me right back every time." We'd lie in her bed, spine to spine, settled under the quilt, nearly sunk into sleep's whirlpool until she spoke. Always have hated that sound. And listening to her, I became that child, stumbling through the ink-blot night along Davenport's Ridge during the worst storm. Branches cracking overhead, rain ripping down, on, looking for home and finding the hollow tree. Stuck my head right in that hollow tree without too much thought. I stood flint dry in that spot until lightning cracked and guillotined a sheath of bark, bringing blackness. "Yep," she'd say after a long quiet spell. "They was searching for hours before they finally found that boy. His neck clean broke, and every time I hear that moaning old wind, he comes to mind." She falls asleep in time, and that boy she once knew becomes all mine. He follows and will not split from me. Some nights still he blows his name in my ear. And one more for the road here. This is a piece that I just felt, it was right around 4 years ago. I felt like I had to write something. My nickname's Kumbaya. And my other friends call me Peace, Love, and Happiness. But I was growing some teeth recently in the last 4 years. But this is called Endling. An Endling is the last of its species. So the last passenger pigeon was an Endling. You wake up to blood pressing at your temples, adrenaline rushing, slop spattering at your feet and all over the slick floors of your life. Cyber-choked sunrise, freeway speeds blur your vision, and white noise gnaws at your jugular. You hit Starbucks to caffeinate, send 5 texts, 2 tweets, review the report, find the John, end up slip-knotted into the matrices of one more sludge day, meaningless time. Where does it all go? Twice you forgot to return your old mama's call, didn't teach your kids how to play guitar or fish the creek, and year after year your garden remains unplanted. Yet, when you turn the corner, wet and frumpy in the November rain, there, a doe stands inside the intersection of 5th and Walnut, trembling, poised to leap right through a windshield or into the gnarl of traffic. She is deadly, unpredictable as a pipe bomb. You wonder if the moment is real, but then as if a button has been pressed or a final loop in the universe has coiled around itself, it all stops. Everything. And suddenly you know the drizzle's iron hush and the intense smell of cinnamon and maple winding from the door of the little donut shop. This scrap of time holds no horns, no fury or scorn, or anthems blaring from teleprompters. You stand with the rest of your brothers and sisters, some limping, others wearing the blunted look of pills or peeled hearts or needle tracks, others sporting MAGA hats or knee braces or smallish Bernie stickers tacked on rear bumpers. They carry groceries, babies, colds, suburban ennui, and freshly tilled sorrow, viruses too. They hide gunshot scars or their burnished shame. They bite back sleep-stunted joy or contain low-grade anger beneath yellow rain slickers. All of you stand together, stitched to your gray corners in the square, this place where you once saw a man strike the mouth of his whining child before boarding the metro, where you landed a meter ticket only a few grim moments after your time expired. Yet, inside this here and now, A deer looks you right in the eye before turning to the hazed river path, where sewer grates and cement give way to pebbles, then silt, and wind-stripped cottonwoods fan in odd synchrony with people who are moving on to the next thing. And because of this, you know the world is holy. Thank you.
Hi all. So honored to be here to participate in this reading, and it feels like a community. It is a community, really, and I have to say, that's some of the most beautiful music. What a great way to start everybody off. Sherry, thank you so much. The theme is Appalachian Witness, and I brought a few witness poems to read tonight. The first poem I'll read is the poem. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I live in Athens. I've been here since '96. So even though I'm sort of like an incomer, I feel like it's home. And living here has, I think it changed my life. It's opened doors for me, and being connected to the poetry community has especially opened doors for me. I just want to be honest about. I think getting connected to Sherry and Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel has taken my work deeper, has called more for me than I even maybe would have called for myself. So I'm grateful for that. Okay, this first poem is called Doorway to Nowhere. It was written in early spring a couple of years ago. Because they were perfect in their own ways, these mutts we found, or maybe they found us, because they had eyes of clarified butter, because their noses were called to dirt, because of their fur, coats whose motes we inhaled, swapped essences with, because cremation changes the state of being to ether and dust, because daffodils will grow, because daffodils are blooming now, because they found each other in life like sisters of soul, because the clay was so dense and the days were so hot, and the only sound left was the mattock as it chopped through roots of hemlock, because it felt like duty to climb down through hill through the woods to the creek and heft slate stones, because a doorway opens to nowhere, because there is a land of myth and dream, because there is no school for letting go. So that is a corner of our yard where our two pups lie together. This poem was a very new poem, and it came jumping out of me with the school shooting in Valley, Texas, and also a visit to my baby granddaughter. So you'll see both themes play through. It's called Coloring Book with Secret Superheroes. This is a coloring book without lines. This is a coloring book where Jane wears any clothing she feels like wearing, and so does Dick, and both of them won't carry a gun. In this book, guns aren't invented. Still, this book is full of action figures, girl ones and boy ones, Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange and Harley Quinn, ones who move in light and ones who delight in mayhem. All the superheroes use their powers to keep sharp things out of babies' reach, even though they shine. There's a secret superhero, and it is you. You can find her if you look. This is a book that claps for you, who can almost roll over, who has never worn a shoe, who can eat her bare feet, who marched at 6 months of age, well, sort of marched, for women's choice. This is a coloring book that says it's okay to use all the colors. Be who you are. It hopes you see the light that shines through your light gray eyes. A book that looks like a mirror of love, that smells like your breath, that is a mirror of milk, that marvels at the impressionist masterpiece that is your diaper after eating peas and beets. That is, and that is only something a Nana would say. Yes, this book has another secret superhero, Nana Man, who has the power to stop a gun from firing at a supermarket or a school or a church or a synagogue. Nana Man is the conscience of the world, or some kind of weird spirit. Don't ask me how he works. The book knows babies are born into light. They come here with all the colors they need, and when the pages of the book are clasped together, it prays that the world does not start taking those colors away too soon. One more. So this is called Shockwave. I wrote this when I saw a New York Times article that said there was a volcanic eruption in Tonga, and it actually had a little graph that showed because of that volcanic eruption under the sea, this shockwave went around the whole planet and hit every little spot on the planet. And the graphic was pretty fascinating and inspired this poem. No way to know when you first touched my hand how deep the shockwave would reach. Then came the checklist. Favorite movie, favorite song, political party, poets, beers, coffee houses and bars, those kinds of questions. And the snore test, and making up after arguing, all of it rippling into that wave, modulating through that thing that had already begun to work, to be the us part of me, sometimes lifting me up, sometimes holding me steady, sometimes pulling me down into your pain. Once a volcano erupted under the sea in Tonga. Scientists recorded the wave circling the Earth for 3 days, little line tacking against an axis, changing tides and air pressure. Just another way to say blood pulses against skin, salt on lips, who we used to be and who we become. And thanks, Wendy. We got this out.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jane Ann, and I'm excited to be here tonight with all these great writers. And I know a lot of them personally, and it's always special to get to read with my friends. The first poem I'm going to read is from the Appalachian Witness book, and it's a poem that I wrote as part of an epistolary workshop that Pauletta Hansel taught. A lot of you guys were in that workshop, guys and gals, and I wrote a poem that is a letter to Denny, actually, who's going to be reading later, and we were both experiencing a similar situation. My father was actually very ill, and so I wrote this letter about losing him, and he actually passed away during the workshop, and it was so helpful for me to be able to find a voice for my grief. But it's called A Kind of Grief, and thank you for listening. Dear Dee, see the sycamore's bony arms reaching up like old men dying. What do they want from us? What could they want? I've been driving the creek down Pleasant Valley to the corner of Star Route. I've been listening, really listening. I know you forgive your father, but I don't know if we can share grief since, like a bird, it seems indivisible. You didn't know looking at this piece of sky would be a look at you. Lone goose crying for its flock long gone, its family long, long gone. But you must have known I'd miss him, since it's not a body I hold, but memory, like a dog squatting to pee on my perennials, the flowers just standing there, saying nothing. There's a knot on my neck that runs down the shoulder blade. This could be what it feels like to have a wing broken. Think water, sky, dark bird. A bald eagle flew above our car yesterday as we drove toward the lake. It zoomed overhead like a douze machina. We talked about the sighting for days, white gliding into white, the superior bird, freed like a dog from a kill kennel, we would take home and feed scraps, let nap on our hearth like on an oversized pillow. Where does that leave us? We no longer belong to sky or water. Our bones separate from themselves. Is that what they want us to know? If I were a bird, I am sure my right wing would be broken. But I am no bird, and my bones are so heavy, I sink when I try to float. So I've been trying to read and write sonnets lately. I've been reading Diane Seuss's book, which is impossible to follow, but this poem is for my mother, and it's called Jane. She's 88 and doesn't care if she lives or dies, my mother, who says so while we are visiting Retha, who wants to know why she hasn't seen the baby, so I hold his picture to her nose. Get down, Izzy, says Retha's daughter, and the mini doodle nips her knuckle as she swats the mutt away. Would you like some sweet tea? Of course my mother doesn't care. Her husband of 68 years, already dead. I know. I held his scrotum like I'd hold a sack of sapphires when I helped him bathe, changed his depends. I've always hated the smell of lilacs, especially after rain. Once I put her day pills in the night slots, and the Lasix made her go all night. 3 times since May, she's lost her credit card, stuck to the bottom of a cookie box, or gone between cushions where her cats refuse to budge. I've tried to keep her company with red geraniums, the paper's crossword on her lap by noon each day. What could she need? She still has her cyclone mind, her heart's jar of bees. And this poem is for my son. So this is truly a witness poem. He was driving home from the airport. He lived in Phoenix, or he lived outside of Phoenix. And he was driving home, and a fellow was parked along the berm of the highway and needed his help with something. And that's what this poem's about. It's called Recovery. Better a small, wild death, the doe, and perhaps a trailing pair of fawns, then your Ford flipped into the Hocking, where Scott's Creek meets the train yard. In this place, it makes sense not to swerve when the deer leap for Lodi or fields of hog corn. Remember, just north of Phoenix, when you stopped to help the blue pickup idling on the shoulder, the man with his buck knife waiting there for anyone? It happened to be you who knelt with the doe, pulled her weight as he coached you into your own. You say her black eyes burned into you and then went dead, 2 spent bulbs. You held onto them as long as reason would allow. You say helping her through seemed spiritual, visceral as any remembering. Now that you felt in her weight the absence of expectation, what it is to stop wanting. And this last poem is for my husband, who I see made it. Hi, Doug. It's called We Can Share This. I unwrap the butcher paper from the frozen chuck. I can't tell ice flakes from wax skin. When work buries you, I take your blood pressure. You take mine, what couples do. Systolic, the blood's embrace. Diastolic, its yield and release, like the weight of your body lifted over mine. I don't know how, to manage a heart that flits like a bird from a salt marsh. I can't keep you safe, your wrist on the table turned up like sacrifice. I uncuff your arm, its meat alive, thumping. We can share this meal that marinates in tarragon and garlic. We can eat from this gleaming china, drink from this crystal cup. We can watch the tapers burn the dark edges of the world. I do have some books on the table back there if you're interested. My book Half-Life came out last year from Sheila Nagig. So thank you.
Okay, gotta wiggle the nerves out. Okay. Wendy, thank you so much for organizing this, and Sherry for putting this beautiful book together. Thank you so much. I will start out with my piece from Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, if I can find it in here. There it is. Women Who Lived in Me. The holler girl jumps too fast into muddy rivers, into muscular arms, knows her feet may never touch the ground, holds her breath too long. The girl with bloodshot eyes screams into her own ears, to the bottom of her throat, until she is so full of her own words she floats away, a balloon lost to the clouds. The displaced hustler shows up to class in work uniform with early wrinkles and the smell of strangers. She buries debt in holes and learns to love the dirt underneath her nails. The spray-tanned goddess uses too much eyeliner to contour maps of every mistake she makes across her face. She warns everyone she meets without saying one word. All these young women, fueled by boiling blood and jagged tongues, unaware the cocoons will not hold them forever. So I have always had just really stressful jobs that I love, but super stressful. So my guilty pleasure, which I'm a little ashamed of, is that I watch the worst TV in the world. My poor husband can attest to this. And so that poem actually came after watching like a 10-year-old rerun of Teen Mom. So just a little TMI about the kind of person I am, I suppose. So I'm going to read a poem about the pandemic. Ooh. So when the pandemic started, I don't write well under stress, so I'm not super flush with poems, I guess. But when the vaccine started rolling in, that was sort of this beacon of hope, and I started getting a little bit of inspiration. So this is The Vaccine. Nurses, like nuns, blessed it as soon as it is carried across state lines, covered in prayer, baptized in carbon dioxide. The chosen one, sent to save us from each other, born to teach cells how to create, to remove what is foreign. We see only eyes on the face of the nurse in the New York Times, tired eyes that hold visions of last breaths, labored and lonely. Not everyone is ready for it. Non-believers, often loudest, mouths exposed, go viral beyond our screens. In Boston, heroes in scrubs dance in the street upon the arrival, hands to the sky, their joy drowns any noise not music. For some, it comes too late. Morgues still fill up quicker than it can seep through muscle tissue. Just like any other savior, available to the fortunate, to the rich, just like any other savior, more questions than answers. So a couple of poems about home before I'm done. This is Jojo throws house parties to the people like loaves of bread. We line up early, stomachs churn for any vibration to shift our hips, flip our hair to heaven, raise hands in fists to perch prayer from palms. He stands on the lawn at the gate, glazed snowflake eyes twinkle the closer we get. One by one, he ushers us in, lures us with the promise of skin and sweat. The floor in front of the stage floats filthy under bare feet, stomping melody holes into the original pine. Pieces splinter, but we can't feel the piercing of callus over the beating of bass, the electricity between bones, tongues flicking verse against teeth. Everyone is here to kneel and be saved by shirtless mustache man at the microphone. We destroy his home and forget the ways to ask forgiveness. When the music stops, we die all over again, turn back to quiet cubicle keyboard ringtone harmony hymns, spines hungry for next Saturday night. And this is Slinging Bible Verses and Pepperoni Rolls. Thanks, God. I love the laughs. For God so loved the world, he gave the village kids pepperoni rolls for $0.25 if they could show the baker a sticker they got for reciting verse at First Baptist. And isn't it something to a 9-year-old to stand in the pulpit of the very first Baptist church on this great big earth until the 9-year-old is a 20-something and finds out that there are First Baptists everywhere, and the earth is a lot smaller and maybe less loved than John said. And after whispering Luke over and over until their tongues blistered, "Blessed are you who are poor," they still knew nothing of kingdoms of heaven that weren't adorned with repo notices and crumpled aluminum, like those that covered those warm pepperoni rolls. Matthew might have called them cannibals. "Take this, eat my body," they'd joke. But this wasn't daily bread, and hunger isn't a metaphor. So on Wednesday nights, they repeated the words of men they'd never known, until those words were all they could hear over the rumbling in their bellies. Thank you, guys.
Hello. I'm so tickled to be here. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you always, Sherry. Two of my sheroes. So I do have a piece in Appalachian Witness. It is an ekphrastic poem. And if you go to page 54 in this volume, you will see a sculpture by Julie Byrne. The name of the sculpture is Seeing I God. And so I wrote a poem called Seeing I God. Seeing I God. Birthing I grow. Walking I stand. Standing I see. Seeing I God. Yesterday's mud flavored my mood. Sun my foe. Clay my food. Stumbling I stand. Running I tail. Seeing I God. I'm my best twin. I grew my friend. Daily I trod. Seeing I God. Thank you, friends. So I wanted to read an excerpt of a story from the first Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel that I was published in, Appalachia Unbroken. I grew up saying Appalachia. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. We said Appalachia too, so. So this is an excerpt. This would be an excerpt of an excerpt and a couple of excerpts from an excerpt. I'm trying to stick to my time, so. But this is from my novel in progress called Rainbow Season, and this story is called The Quiet of Her Soul. The setting is Star Point, Georgia, July 1958. How'd that baby get in here? There it was again, that music, a sound like laughter, crying, and a quick cough cough. A blues song from the North Georgia mountains, as fresh as a brown thrush warbling between pines off Brasstown Bald. An air Cora might have made up when she was 5, pining after those green gray hills in the distance. Time flies when you're making up songs you never let anyone hear. The baby was sleeping. Cora was pacing, stopping for a moment to stare. The baby's hair lay black and straight across her forehead and had a slight curl and redness at its roots. She patted the baby's hair and blew cool air across her face to soothe the moist July heat, as Miss Alma might have done when Cora was a baby. Cora missed her mama. Miss Alma transformed herself from a woman pastor to a traveling evangelist and was, at that very moment, trekking by truck alone to Arizona to save the souls of renegade cliff dwellers. For years, Alma had seen visions and heard voices, and determined to repay an overdue debt, she set her heart due west. That's what she told Cora. But Mama, Cora said, one Sunday afternoon when the supper dishes were dry and trembling in the hutch. Cora never said much, even to her own mother. But this time she asked, why? I know what I seen, I know what I heard, I got to go. Well, what about the Holy Church? They can get another pastor or somebody to stand in the pulpit while I'm gone. And Miss Alma walked out of the kitchen, leaving Cora staring out the back window. What about me? The question could have gotten Cora a smack when she was 5 or 15. But now Cora was grown enough to ask a personal question without somebody calling her sassy. Plus, Miss Alma was well out of earshot. What about you? Miss Alma returned to the kitchen. Cora, this ain't about you or me. I got work to do. No more foot dragging. Ain't nothing gonna happen to you. I know, Cora, you've been here in this house with me your whole life. You're 35 years old. Who you worried about, baby, me or you? Mama, her voice was hoarse with tears caught in her throat. I don't know how to do nothing. Miss Alma looked at Cora. Cora kept talking, her voice soft and frantic. You can't leave me here by myself. You're the one always telling me I ain't got no common sense. Oh, Cora. Okay, so I don't know nothing. Cora turned and pointed toward the street. And you know better. Ain't but a handful of us around here. What if they get you? Get me for what? Your black skin. You run into a bunch of them men who don't care nothing about you. You driving across the world by yourself. And Cora looked out the window. Alma stared at the back of Cora's head and walked out the room. I don't know why you worried. I ain't. Miss Alma went outside to her truck, raised the hood of that rugged 1950 red Chevy, then strode to the side of the house to the faucet. She ran water in the bucket, topped off the radiator, and slammed the hood shut. Inside the truck, she pulled a pillow from the floor and plopped it on top of the seat cushion. She placed her Bible on the dashboard. Alma had packed the basics: food, handful of skirts and blouses, plus things she knew she needed to minister, to speak truth to the renegades, to give them healing words to save their very souls. Everything else she left behind. Mama, you never talked to me. Cora stood beside the truck with her arms wrapped around herself. You're doing this, you don't tell me why. That's just it as far as you're concerned. Miss Alma reached and opened the glove box, pulled out some short pencils and a box of Kleenex. I guess that's how we do. Means you just have to trust me. Miss Alma slammed the glove box shut and went back in the house while Cora stared at the hard, resolute truck and hugged herself. Miss Alma was set to leave the very next morning. At last, Cora would have what she always wanted, to be left alone. Awake all night, Cora lay still, drinking in new day air so heavy and wet, she might as well have been breathing underwater. At daybreak, Alma came into Cora's room and squeezed her daughter's big toe. Cora opened her amber eye first. Miss Alma whispered hoarse and earthy, "I don't know when I'm coming back." Cora turned and pulled the covers to her ears. Alma sat on the bed and snatched the covers away. "I wouldn't leave who was going to break you." She grabbed Cora's shoulders and stared straight into her glassy, blinking eyes. "You got to remember who you are. Even your name is legend. Women with your name have fought giants, outrun slavers, faced down death. Cora, I gave you a name that fits who you are. You can handle anything, baby. It means heart. It jumps out of the core of who you are." Miss Alma pulled Cora to her chest. "You'll prosper while I'm gone. I already prayed for you, and I ain't gonna stop it." Cora hugged her mama tight. "How could somebody just leave?" Miss Alma said, "Just go back to sleep and wake up with me already gone. But you gotta make me a promise. No matter how bad things get, you gotta remember I love you more than my own life. And Cora, always look for a rainbow. Remember how I used to tell you? It'll remind you of the promise between me and you, like God's promise between him and Noah." Cora lay there listening to the rush of thunder across hardwood floors, heavy steps assigned to balancing suitcases and grocery bags full of peach preserves, grits, and canned corn. The screen door slammed. An engine started. The truck departed. Cora drifted over and under sleep until something woke her up. Squeal of laughter, a quick cry, a new delight, a strange surprise. Bundle brown with glowing eyes. That baby. Thank you.
I was hoping I was tall enough for this thing, so I made sure I wore heels. I'm so short, but I would like to thank Wendy and Sherry for having me. I have one in Appalachian Witness as well. It's actually a series of poems about my father-in-law, who was like a adopted father to me. I was lucky enough to be transplanted to Floyd County, Kentucky, when I was 5 years old. So I grew up around a lot of coal miners and some really amazing people. So I'll start with the one from Appalachian Witness, and then I'll read a second of a series that's in my book as well, about my daddy. So this is called Shooting Off the Solid, Ode to the 1981 Tater Branch mine disaster, to which he was involved in, and many of the men that I grew up around were. So that December day in 81, you were tired of swallowing coal. So you walked out into the cold, incandescent light of day to eat the lunch she carefully tied up for you. Fried bologna and white bread. You were a dead man walking. And she knew what coal meant. She came from coal. Her bones were charred with it. Lymphoma. She still waved you on past the hot tracks and coal gons, down to the veins of black. But back in 81 on Tater Branch, an angel hitched with you. You had just cleared the drift mouth when it blew, collapsing you to your knees, praying. Just like Vietnam, black soot flew instead of tank shrapnel. 8 men were dead. You spoke the truth to those dark, stiff suits, walking in tall with black-rimmed eyes and nails. No other Union mines would come to call. That act of grace got you blackballed and government cheese. Yet it taught your boys to stand up for the dead, unless they shoot at you. These winter nights, your insomnia holds vigil. Their ore-scuffed hands waken you. Your sniper fire wakens you, and her distant whispers ache in you. So in my book, thank you. Like I said, I wrote a series of them, and I grew up with them and my husband from the time I was 17. They took me in as part of their family. So, and I won't give away my age, but we've been together about 31 years now. So, but this one's entitled Daddy, and it goes in with the series. So I thought I would just, since that one was in here, I would read this one from my book, Crimson Sunshine. Your presence is announced like clockwork, the heavy thud of your lungs heaving as you climb the hill towards the gaped brown door. The cough is so demanding and always on time as you arrive home. How could you tell the hour? So many feet below the coal. Down the shafts and beyond the elevator in veins of black. There is no standing, but crawling on bent knee or laying, if need be, on your back for 12 hours. More now with the stranger's mouth to feed. Your hacking is a telltale sign it's morning. You climb the stairs to turn off my light. It was something we shared. Daily you would settle the fear a monster had started. Praise God for your bleeding heart and blackened hands. The 30 years in cold did that. Forever stained like the bathtub she readied for you. If I dare risk it, I could wander to a frame in time when she packed your sandwiches, antique Christmas heirlooms, so precious, but she knew what coal meant. Every night she anticipated it. I was too young to comprehend, and she dared to hint at it. She would fold the foil so gently, tugging the edges, pristine in the silver wrapping. She packed it in the coal-encrusted box. But there was no dirt. It was just stained from years of use. She dared not wash it night. She dared not wash it night after night, year after worrying year. Pure love, pure sacrifice. I learned those from you. What position you had gotten yourself into, but not as sure as Vietnam. A pain you declare is off limits. You escaped them both, but not the wounds. The deep begging your lungs are giving reveal exactly where you have been. Coal saved us all and fed us too, in that tiny coal camp house. There were rows and rows of them standing still, but ever so slanted and worn from time and the love within. There were children in every room relying on your uniformed back of soot. The weight, it must have been, pressing as if the air in the mind, thick and foreboding. You never revealed it, not once. And so I have one in Women Speak, which Carrie Seymour has a lot to do with that one, and she chose this one, and it's about my Mama Birchie. And so I thought with the witness theme, it would be a good thing to read about her. I see her now in your childhood mind, the 4 dank rooms she shuffled through, oxygen tank and cracked hands. The Lucky Strikes had done their work. She had an odd way about her as she sat on her little couch, a coffee table near filled with ashtrays, crochet, and quilt patterns. She rocked slightly as if rocking her infant, maybe a habit she could not cast away. She had rocked 13 babies since she herself was 13. A mother's way of holding on a little longer to the preciousness of being needed. Her children are grown, and a few have slipped away, but on Sunday her house was filled with their memories. There were murmurings of their children, their work in the mines, or simply laughter to pass the molasses that was Appalachian time. As they filled in, she would scutter about the kitchen, creating her masterpiece from pinto beans, lard, and flour. No one was allowed to cook but her. Everyone washed their dish to show respect for their full bellies and quieted hearts. For someone with meager means, she fed us all, as Jesus breaking bread. Instead, hers was cornbread and blackberry dumplings. On summer nights, as a thunderstorm graced the sky, Birchie and I would swing on her front porch, where laughter would turn to conversation and lessons on life. We would retire to her bed, falling asleep to the Rockford Files and her muffled snoring. Bergie, she was not boring. A 22 under her pillow and a daily billow of smoke about her living room ceiling. Her cough ever present as she painted her fingernails red, crocheting blankets and stitching quilts for the holidays ahead. She was a constant for me, though the rooms changed a bit from the 4 rooms to a hospital bed, and we continued our nightly routine there too, though we watched Johnny Carson instead. At night I would sleep in the orange chair next to her bed with the dread of leaving. We would never swing again watching the rain, but I knew to relieve her from the strain meant I would be broken. It broke me too, my heart so big for her. With her last request, her nails were painted pink to match her jogging suit. Thank you.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to dedicate this to my late friend, Bob Gabriel. We were in the same 1st Cavalry Division together. He passed away a few years ago. We were close friends. Also to my buddy Eddie, who survived an ambush we were in. And also to my son Jonathan, who was in Desert Storm and suffers from PTSD. And to my illiterati friends, Steve Mowry, and we've got quite a great writers group called the Illiterati. Very appropriate. And of course, I always want to dedicate this to my wife, Sharon Hatfield, who has stood by me and encouraged me through thick and thin. I'll toast to that. This story starts, because of the time limitations, I start in the middle of the story, which some people said that's where it should have started anyway. But I'll try to read it. Background is my buddy Harry and I are at the prisoner of war camp. We pick up 8 prisoners, we call them papasons, dressed in silk, dark silk and scraggly beards, and we load them up to go fill sandbags at the beach on the river. And I'm going to start when we start back. Finally, it was time to leave the beach. I motioned for the prisoners to come in from the water. They started wading back up to the bank. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a figure diving into the river. I shouted, "No," and began unlacing my boots to go after him. When I looked up again, he had too much of a lead. I shouldered my M16 and commenced firing single shots into the water. He was about 30 yards out. He swam under water, then came up for air. The current swept him downstream. I aimed and waited for him to come up. When he resurfaced, I fired a short volley and missed. He dove back under, but then he came up, facing me, almost waist high out of the water, arms outstretched. I fired again. When I pulled the trigger, I saw a cloud of red burst out behind his head. He sank and never came up. 2 Vietnamese fishermen in a boat paddled out to where he had gone under. Finally, drifting downstream a short distance, they pulled his body to the surface and into the boat. Harry was watching the other prisoners. Their eyes were solemn as they looked straight out toward the comrade's body in the boat. They waited silently. Once the fishermen arrived ashore, people gathered around the body. A blue cast had begun to settle into the waxy white corpse. a grimace on his face, eyes squint shut, and a small, bloody bullet hole in his forehead. Just below his right thumb, another bullet hole. I could not make myself look at the back of his head. Later, I wondered, what were his last thoughts? Maybe after he was wounded in the hand, he realized he could not escape. Perhaps that's why he turned toward me and sprang out, chest high, of the water with his arms outstretched to give himself up. God, I had to quit thinking about it, or his image would haunt my dreams for a lifetime. During the dire trip back to the POW compound, none of the 7 captives spoke or looked at us. I sensed contempt in their eyes and a certain sadness and reverence for the loss of their comrade. He was a rice farmer, probably just trying to make his way home to his once thriving valley. I was young and not quite a soldier. I didn't yet realize the implications of killing an unarmed, defenseless man. For several nights, my heart and mind tossed in anguish. It all happened so fast. I had felt something in that instant, something I had not felt since shooting a rabbit when I was 13 and having it die in my hand. Something I had hoped to never encounter again, never see or feel again. Freeholey Beach, California, 1977. At Freeholey Beach, seagulls hovered in the balmy draft and reached and searched the waves. The tips of the winded feathers matched the white caps. My pal Gurney steered his Volkswagen van into the parking lot. He cut the engine, reached to in his shoulder bag, and pulled out a small plastic vial. He dispensed 2 capsules of MDA, a mild psychedelic, and reached one to me. We uncapped them, poured the white powder into our open beer bottles, and headed down to the surf. After listening to the breakers and feeling the warm October air, we moseyed over past the beach to a berth of black lava rock, fissured by millennia of waves and weather. The tide was ebbing, leaving small pools of water in a bowl of fissures. We sat down, gulls shrieked and strutted across the sand. The air was rich with salt. Gurney turned on his portable cassette recorder to record our conversation as an audio letter to our Army buddy serving in Germany. On the almost cloudless day, as the MDA seeped in, we began a heart-to-heart chat. Eventually, I spoke about Vietnam, the first time I'd ever been able to talk about it, though I had been home for over a decade. Finally, I told Gurney of a recurring dream regarding an incident at the An Lao River. I described a POW, a peasant, a rice farmer. He attempted to escape, swimming down the river. I had to shoot him. When I finished my story, I looked down into a small pool of water in the dark lava in front of me. There was a baby octopus trapped, not much bigger than my thumb. The delicate orange creature was struggling, its tiny tentacles reaching to find a way out of the enclosed pool of salt water. Then Gurney spoke to me. "Jack, you said something very interesting. You mentioned an image, a cloud of red, after you shot him." I thought hard about that, not realizing I had said it, having been caught up in the moment of the nightmare. We talked on. The incident in Vietnam had lived in my disturbed dreams and thoughts for 10 years. The MDA had had an effect I had never experienced. It opened me up, lightening my heart. It heightened my empathy and made it easier for me to talk. But more importantly, a close friend had listened and responded to my story, ultimately freeing me to later write a song, Cloud of Red, and sing it about the event in the months to come during my regular music and storytelling performances. As the sun sank lower, our time at Freeholey Beach was drawing to a close. Gurney clicked off the recorder and picked up our beer bottles. I reached down and gently scooped up the little orange octopus into my palm. I walked out into the receding tide and returned it to the sea. The day that he remembers most was the 4th day of July. He was guarding prisoners, and I cannot tell you why. An old man, he began to run. He was looking for his freedom. Johnny got his gun. The old man hit the river. It was such a sight to see. The other prisoners cheered him on. They wanted him to be free. Johnny took his aim and he saw that old gray head. And when he squeezed the rigger, Lord, he saw the cloud of red. Thank you.
Okay, really? I gotta follow that. Thanks, Jack. And thanks everybody for being here and also being so patient. It's a long night. And I think I'm just going to read 3 tonight. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Sherry. I don't know if the sound guy's in here, but really, thank you. Is that you? Thank you. It really does make all the difference, doesn't it, at a reading when the sound is so good? And this is my second time reading at Stewart's. Both times, sound was incredible. So this poem's called Last Lesson. This was written, as Jane Ann said earlier, as part of the epistolary workshop that we participated in. So this was my response to one of her poems. I'd like to give a little nod to Philip Booth's first lesson because this kind of was inspired by that. This is called Last Lesson. Do you remember when he tipped you back, held your head in the cup of his hand, your arms wide, eyes fixed on seabirds and swallows? Now he has let go, and you are prepared as he intended for the riptide that pulls you to the ocean floor like a starfish caught between gravity and weightlessness. The body knows its pharyngeal gills trade water for remembrance. You'll breathe like this for weeks or months or longer. And when you return, waves of grief will find you making your mother's bed. Drop everything, since nothing can fight the force of water. Ask rocks and rivers how many tears it took to shape the shore. All right. Thank you. This poem is called Abscission, and that might take you back to 4th grade science class. Abscission is that process whereby when a leaf drops off of the limb of the tree, it creates a scar. Bleh, bleh. I taught speech for years. You'd never know it. Anyway, abscission, and it was the perfect metaphor when writing about the grief that my grandmother held that I didn't know about my whole childhood until I became an adult, about the murder of her son. And we never knew.
Abscission. When I think of secrets, I think of my grandmother and the hidden staircase I followed from her bedroom closet to the mudroom, to the open, unused well outside, its black mouth wide and silent, an old corkscrew willow in the yard, so many leaf scars, and the tornado that lifted the entire suffering thing straight out of the ground. I think of the attic filled with her son's belongings, every letter he ever wrote to her, the hair of dead children in boxes between rafters and tiny turn-of-the-century shoes. If all the sins and secrets of the world were fallen leaves, they would soften the road from her farm in central Illinois to the foothills of eastern Colorado. Her son's body riding undisturbed in the boot of a Ford Fairlane. At dawn, the sun burning red, a sailor's warning as a deputy sheriff makes his rounds to the tune of "Don't Be Cruel." Flies buzzing like you surely imagine over the truck of a car in a motel parking lot at 6 a.m. That was supposed to be trunk of a car. Nothing can prepare you for some things. In 4th grade, I learned about Abscission, a river birch in summer, each leaf connected to the tree like a son to his mother. When the leaf drops, what remains is a scar that heals over, can barely be seen. Okay. This one was inspired by one of my sisters, and I did want to thank my other sister, Deb. She comes to every one of my readings. She's like my fan, and I love her so much. Thanks, Deb. But my other sister inspired this poem. It's called Consciousness as a Kind of Relativity. Our other sister, Patty, passed away in 2018, and Steph, you might have known her, Patty Naff. She was in the DD system. When I was 5 years old, I dreamed I was 6. I woke to throw back the quilt on my mother's bed, since that's where I often slept, and ran downstairs, out the back door, onto my big red bike. I pedaled up Crescent Drive, prodigious elms overhead, and sunlight made its way beneath the canopy. I was 6 years old and fully alive, breathing in, as if for the first time, the sweet air of gingergrass. I awoke from that dream in my mother's bed. Great breaths of quiet wafted between my brother's angry cries and the clank of silverware downstairs. Was I 5 or was I 6? Was I sleeping still? Was my life real? How could I know? Years later, I would read Elizabeth Bishop and feel a kinship to that girl in the waiting room. 3 days and you'll be 7 years old. My sister's dolls were put away like sick children. Naked babies sat on shelves in her room with blue ink numbers scribbled on their vinyl heads, smudged from kissing. Surgeries, she called them. When we were old and she was sick with voices, she wished more than once for me to be inside her head. But consciousness only goes so far. Empathy, that flimsy wall, is all that saved me. I was, thankfully, alone in my own. I believe my consciousness once split along the seam inside me. One side a still center, a steady stone that says I am no different than a tree, a herd of deer. The other reaches for extra salt, another glass of wine. Thank you.
Has this been amazing or what? Thank you, everyone. Oh my gosh. I noticed nobody said their name, so I hope that you will go up to people and introduce yourself and find out their name. My name's been spoken so many times tonight. I'm embarrassed to mention it again, but I'm Wendy Mcvicker. Thank you for asking. And I'm just so grateful that we were able to make this happen. It was sort of a brainstorm that started at a book fair here at Stewart's last fall, and now here we are. And I know Carrie Gunter Seymour has been mentioned more than once, and she's in this issue too, but she was not able to be with us tonight. Her spirit is with us. So I think I will start with my poem in this beautiful anthology. It is called Drownings. In these stories, whispered or sung, someone always drowns, usually a woman with flowing braids. Brown river, gray ocean, chasms to cross without blinking. Not everyone makes it to shore, to freedom, to air unburdened. Water closes over bodies, but dying voices are echoed by gulls, by the low moan of foghorns. Some bodies are shattered on the rocks so close to home. Is the land home? Some are turned back unwanted, returned to the salt sea, the mud-laden river, sucking. Those clouds above the water, their last breath. So it seems that this story of people being losing their homes for one reason or another, having their homes taken away from them, and trying to find a home somewhere else, that seems to be a pretty perpetual story. And I treasure this place and these people and this feeling home here with you. But I wrote another story about people in that kind of situation, another poem, and called it Immigrant Ghosts. Walking toward us with their suitcases and black umbrellas, holding out their hands to feel the weather. Are they a dream we had once? They miss the rain filling their palms, running down their faces. They miss its cool touch on their cheeks. How many times have they stopped, then moved on, opening and closing their umbrellas, reaching out their hands and pulling them back again, empty? They have no words for how far they've come or how lost they feel, how weary here on the railway platform where trains, though heard, white noise in the distance and felt shuddering the earth, never reach the station. So I actually would like to read you a poem called A Brother Never Ends. And I would like to read you two more. They're not long. And this actually started with a line from Anne Carson, A Brother Never Ends, from her beautiful book, Knox, which is in part about her brother. A brother never ends, but he may break, a ragged branch hanging toward the ground, shedding bark and fiber. Crinkled leaves among the green may whisper, an indecipherable lament. Brother, almost one flesh, but alien, spinning out in a spurt of dust or gravel, running. A speck at the far edge of the field where the woods begin. That darkness, its pull. And then I would like to read you a brand new poem. And it's it's funny. So Steph mentioned bad TV. I was actually watching what I don't think of as very bad TV. It was even on PBS, and not long. And there was in the final scene there was a child, and that child entered my dreams that night. So this is called Fatherless Child. In my dream, there was a child with nowhere to go. He was the fatherless child from the film we watched before bed. In the dream, he was canny, even sly, and kept turning up with his knowing eyes while we tried to get on with the day. What did he want? Was he, as Jung would have it, some neglected part of me, some part that knows me and clamors for attention? Not clamors, really. He never made demands. He appeared, he looked, he saw. Maybe he said something once, and I tried to fob him off with a list of words in a foreign tongue, words for rock, schist, fossilized remains, words for the earth's deepest and most lasting secrets. And what are mine that I've ignored for years, that rise to the surface and jut into my dreams, waiting for me to name them? So, thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you again, Devin. Thank you, Jordan, our sound guy back there. Thank you, Food. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for these beautiful readings, people. And now we get up and move around and talk with each other and have drinks and nibblies and buy books and celebrate that we've made it and no one fell off the stage. Thank you.